Picture this: a metal crate, a snowy Colorado hillside, and a wolf blinking into a landscape its species hasn't touched in over 80 years. The latch clicks, the wolf bolts, and with that single moment, Colorado kicked off one of the most audacious, controversial, and scientifically surprising wildlife experiments in modern American history. What followed caught ranchers off guard. It caught politicians off guard. And honestly, it caught the biologists off guard too. This is the story of Colorado's gray wolf reintroduction and what the data actually revealed. Let's start at the very beginning, because the origin story of this program is wild in itself. Colorado voters narrowly approved the wolf reintroduction program in 2020 in a public ballot measure that garnered just 50.9% of the vote. That's a margin thinner than a wolf's patience for a slow elk. Half the state said yes, half the state said absolutely not. And yet here they were, legally mandated to bring back an apex predator that hadn't roamed these lands since the 1940s. In support of that voter-led initiative, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service finalized the designation of an experimental population of gray wolves in Colorado under the Endangered Species Act, providing management flexibility in support of the state's voter-mandated reintroduction program. The machinery was in motion. There was no turning back. But before a single wolf set paw on Colorado soil, scientists and wildlife managers had to answer one very important question. Where do you even get wolves? A one-year agreement announced in October 2023 between Colorado Parks and Wildlife and the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife secured Oregon as the source for the first 10 wolves for the Colorado wolf reintroduction effort. And these weren't just any wolves pulled off the street. All of the wolves had to meet certain requirements. They had to be 1 to 5 years old, not be breeding, had to have at least 3 functional canine teeth, had to have both eyes present and functional, no injuries or missing limbs, and could not have transmittable health issues like lice or heartworm. Basically, the most rigorous job interview you've ever seen, except the candidates had no idea they were applying. Then, the first 10 wolves were released into Summit and Grand counties in December 2023, all of them fitted with GPS satellite collars. Colorado was watching every step. Now, here's where it starts getting interesting. The plan on paper was clean and logical. The Colorado Wolf Restoration and Management Plan recommended the capture and translocation of 10 to 15 wolves every year for 3 to 5 years, for a total of 30 to 50 translocated wolves. Orderly, methodical, scientific. Nature, however, had a different agenda. Almost immediately, the wolves started doing things nobody quite expected. Some dispersed into neighboring states. One turned up in Wyoming. One wandered into Rocky Mountain National Park. CPW biologists confirmed a collared wolf briefly traveled east of I-25 and into southern Colorado. These animals weren't reading the management plan. They were just being wolves. And wolves, it turns out, are spectacularly unpredictable roommates. And speaking of unpredictable, let's talk about what happened with the ranchers, because this is where the tension really ignites. Before the program launched, wildlife managers knew livestock conflict was coming. They set up a compensation fund, hired conflict specialists, drew up protocols. Reasonable, right? What they did not anticipate was the sheer scale and speed of the financial hit. Ranchers in Grand County hit Colorado Parks and Wildlife with a $582,000 bill for wolf kills and related impacts on cattle and sheep in the first year of reintroduction, $500,000 in year 1. And the state had allocated just $350,000. In the compensation fund, for that fiscal year. Do the math, it doesn't work. With approved payouts, that brought the total to $343,415, leaving just $6,485 remaining in the depredation compensation fund. $6,000. That's not a safety net, that's a post-it note. But wait, it gets more layered than just dollars and cents. Colorado actually went further than any other state in how it defined livestock losses. Colorado goes a step further than other states by paying for indirect losses such as reduced pregnancy rates and weight loss among livestock following a depredation. That sounds generous, and it is, but it also meant the claims ballooned in ways nobody budgeted for. In the first full fiscal year after Colorado released its first wolves, the agency paid over $6,000 to 13 producers. So far, it has paid over $700,000 to ranchers for losses in 2025, with the final amount paid expected to reach over $1 million. $1 million. The program was breaking its own budget before it was barely off the ground. And the human cost went beyond money. Imagine being a rancher who's worked the same land for generations, and suddenly there's a predator out there you can't see, can't fence out easily, and can't legally shoot. Distrust and anger from the agriculture community became so intense that some ranchers won't answer messages from CPW staff or allow the agency's representatives on their land. That's not a policy problem, that's a relationship breakdown. 2 years in, Colorado's wolf reintroduction, one of the most ambitious American conservation projects of the past century, had only gotten rockier, with almost 60 confirmed wolf depredations on livestock, though ranchers claimed that number was actually much higher. The conflict wasn't just human versus wolf, it was neighbor versus neighbor, rural versus urban, the 50.9% versus the 49.1%. Now let's flip to the ecological side of the story, because this is where the science gets genuinely jaw-dropping. The whole premise of wolf reintroduction, the story everyone loves to tell, is the trophic cascade. The idea that when you bring back an apex predator, it doesn't just add one animal to the food chain, it rewires the entire ecosystem. Wolves eat elk. Elk stop grazing in the same spots. Vegetation recovers. Rivers change course. It's the circle of life on steroids, and it's been the rallying cry of conservationists for decades, largely inspired by what happened at Yellowstone after wolves were reintroduced there in 1995. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. The science itself is now in dispute. Colorado Parks and Wildlife's wolf monitoring and data coordinator described whether wolves contribute to these ecosystem changes as one of the most hotly debated topics in wolf ecology. That's a wildlife official on the record saying the very thing the whole program is built on is still being argued about. A new analysis challenged one of the most publicized claims about Yellowstone's wolves. In a detailed comment published in Global Ecology and Conservation, researchers from Utah State University and Colorado State University demonstrated that a 2025 study overstated the ecological effects of wolf recovery in Yellowstone National Park. The peer-reviewed pushback was blunt. Far from indicating a strong, system-wide cascade, the current evidence points to a more complex and constrained outcome, one that underscores the importance of analytical rigor and ecological context in evaluating the consequences of large carnivore recovery. In plain English, the rivers changing, willows exploding, elk fleeing narrative probably overstated, and Colorado's own researchers echoed this. A 2024 report noted that wolves may not cause immediate ecosystem improvements, but would still have positive impacts. The cascade is real, just slower, messier, and more context-dependent than the documentaries made it look. Such studies emphasize that understanding trophic cascades in large, complicated ecosystems is challenging, and that reintroduction of carnivores, including wolves, doesn't always fully restore degraded ecosystems. In general, sweeping claims about trophic cascades caused by wolves are context-dependent and sometimes exaggerated. This doesn't mean the reintroduction is failing ecologically. It means the story is more complicated than a bumper sticker, and complicated stories are always more interesting. So where does the population actually stand right now? Here's the payoff, and it's genuinely surprising in both directions. So far, Colorado Parks and Wildlife has completed 2 successful translocation efforts which brought 25 gray wolves to Colorado. But death came fast too. The program has experienced 10 deaths, 1 lethal removal, and seen 4 packs established. 1 wolf was killed by a mountain lion, nature asserting its own hierarchy. Several died from human-related causes. 1 was lethally removed by CPW itself after repeated livestock attacks in Pitkin County. During the most recent reporting period, 10 wolves died, 1 from an encounter with a mountain lion, 6 from human-related causes, and 3 still under investigation, marking a 61% survival rate for the year. That's a brutal number for a population trying to find its footing. And yet, and this is the jaw-dropper, the wolves are reproducing. All 4 packs had pups in the spring of 2025. Pup survival seems to be relatively high, said CPW's Wolf Monitoring Coordinator. We had a high count of 17 pups throughout the year, and we know that 14 of them were still alive at the end of the biological year. Now, nearly 2.5 years after the first release, following births, deaths, and a second release of 15 animals in January 2025, the state is home to at least 32 wolves, 32 from 10. Even accounting for losses, the pack is growing. Colorado's wolves are finding each other, pairing up, denning, and raising pups in the Rocky Mountain wilderness. That is not nothing. That is everything. But the program is now at a knife's edge, and this is where the political drama slams back into the frame. Colorado Parks and Wildlife officials confirmed they have no plans to relocate additional gray wolves into the state this winter, confirming a major setback for the agency's voter-mandated reintroduction program following federal interference on behalf of livestock industry groups. The Trump administration's U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service challenged Colorado's decision to source wolves from British Columbia, with USFWS Director Brian Nesvik threatening to take control of the state program, claiming the state was out of compliance with federal protocols. Colorado pushed back hard, arguing it had done everything by the book. The standoff is ongoing as of mid-2026. Colorado's Wolf Conservation Program Manager put it plainly. We're very much at an inflection point. With high survival and high pup recruitment, the population of wolves could expand in both size and distribution, moving us towards the recovery goals outlined in the plan. However, with even just 1 year of lower survival, high mortality, or low recruitment, additional years of reintroduction may be necessary. That's the wild reality of this experiment. 10 wolves became 32. The trophic cascade everyone promised turned out to be messier than the brochure. Ranchers are furious. Biologists are arguing. Federal agencies are playing tug-of-war with the state. And somewhere out in the mountains of northwest Colorado, a wolf is hunting elk in a landscape that, whether the humans can agree or not, has been fundamentally changed. Colorado has the largest elk population in North America, and over 70% of western Colorado is in public ownership. The habitat is there. The prey is there. The wolves are there. The only question left is whether the humans can get out of their own way long enough to let the experiment run. This story isn't over, not even close. It's a live documentary, updating in real time, with new pups born every spring and new political fights breaking out every fall. If you want to stay on top of one of the most gripping conservation battles in the American West, subscribe right now, because the next chapter of Colorado's wolf story is already being written, and trust us, you do not want to miss the plot twist.